Hi class, welcome to chapter 8. This will be an overview of micronutrients, which are vitamins and minerals. And then in future chapters, we're going to talk about each of the vitamins and minerals in much more detail. So, can food be medicine? The answer is absolutely. In these pictures, you see disease. The child with the bowed legs on this kind of middle of the screen has rickets, which is due to vitamin D deficiency. Chlorosis is due to iron deficiency, and scurvy is due to vitamin C deficiency. And you can see scurvy right here. So usually we get adequate nutrients. However, if we're missing an essential nutrient, disease can develop. And if we identify what that nutrient is and we supplement the diet or provide foods in the diet that have that nutrient, we can cure the disease or we can fix the disease. So, all of these things are diseases throughout history. Luckily, they do not occur with quite the frequency anymore as they used to, but in the 1700s, the 1800s, all of these were very, very frequent and regular diseases. Scurvy was something encountered by sailors who sailed across the ocean on very long journeys. And during those trips, they didn't bring many fresh fruits or vegetables. And so towards the middle and end of the journeys, they were not getting vitamin C from anywhere. And they developed scurvy, which caused bleeding gums, wounds on their arms and legs, confusion, tiredness, pain. And then these bowed legs can happen in vitamin D deficiency because vitamin D is needed for calcium absorption and bone mineralization. And the bowed legs happen if your bones are too weak and they become kind of rubbery almost or flexible. So when you stand, the weight of your body bends your bones out. And this has happened to miners who worked way down in mines, in caves where there was no sunlight. This has also happened in children in the Industrial Revolution. And besides the visual malformation, these children can get fractures, weakness, and deformities. So vitamins. Vitamins are organic substances. That means they have carbon in them. They're carbon containing, and they're needed in small amounts in the diet for normal function, growth, and maintenance. They are essential for humans because we cannot make them, or we cannot make them in adequate amounts, or there's environmental factors inhibiting our ability to make them in sufficient amounts. There are a few vitamins that are made in humans. However, we don't make enough of any of them, so we need to get them from foods that we eat. And if we're missing any of our vitamins, we can develop deficiency, like you saw on the previous slides. There are two categories of vitamins, and we're going to talk about them coming up, but there's water-soluble vitamins, which include the B vitamins and vitamin C, and then there's fat-soluble vitamins, which include D, E, A, and K. And you can get vitamins from food sources, or you can get vitamins that have been synthesized in a lab or isolated from food and come in a supplement form. And it's not necessarily true that all natural forms of the vitamin are better than synthetic forms. For example, folic acid, when it's in its synthesized form, it's 1.7 times more potent than in the natural form. The natural form of vitamin E, however, is better than the synthetic form. So there's not a generalization you could say that all natural vitamins are better than synthesized vitamins, or all synthesized vitamins are better than natural vitamins. These are the different vitamins and minerals, and they're grouped according to their function in this picture here. So we're going to talk about all these in the next few lectures. This is my plate, obviously, and this lists the food as far as food groups go and explains which vitamins come from each of the food groups. So if you're eating grains, you're going to get a certain vitamin profile. If you're eating vegetables, you're going to get slightly different vitamins, fruits, dairy, and protein. And so by eating a variety of foods from each of these food groups, you can make sure that you're obtaining all of the vitamins you need. Absorption of vitamins. So the vitamins are absorbed differently depending on if they're called fat soluble or classified as fat soluble versus if they're classified as water soluble. The fat soluble vitamins are stored in the fat and the liver, and generally speaking, they're transported through the lymphatic system. 40 to 90% of the fat soluble vitamins from food can be absorbed when the body is working well and there's no issues. However, there are certain disease conditions and certain medications, as well as certain supplements that people might take that can interfere with fat absorption. So, for instance, cystic fibrosis. In cystic fibrosis, these people often don't produce enough of some of the enzymes needed to break down and transport fats. So they may be deficient in the fat-soluble vitamins and need to take a supplement. Orlistat, this is a medication that I told you guys about in our last slide, and I talked about it in gruesome detail. This medication inhibits fat absorption, and then the fat comes out, and I told you all about that. So that would also inhibit absorption of the fat-soluble vitamins. And then mineral oil laxatives. A laxative is something that would help you have a bowel movement or go to the bathroom. And mineral oil laxatives absorb the fat-soluble vitamins. However, then they're excreted in the oil. So the oil itself is absorbing it, not your own cells. Water-soluble vitamins are generally transported through our circulatory system and are not stored in the body. However, there are some exceptions to that, both B6 and B12. Because we don't store these in high amounts, it's good to try to consume these on a daily or regular basis. They have different kind of timelines as far as how long we can go without them. So thiamine deficiency, if we go 10 days without any thiamine sources, we can start to show some deficiency symptoms. Vitamin C, about 20 to 40 days. So on those long sea journeys, they were taking much longer than 20 to 40 days, and extreme vitamin C deficiency developed. About 50 to 90% of the water-soluble vitamins from food that we eat can be absorbed. All right. So most of the water-soluble vitamins are excreted, and they're excreted daily when we urinate, and that's why we need to continue to replace them on a regular basis. I did say some exceptions, and B12 and B6 are exceptions. These are not easily excreted in the urine. Fat-soluble vitamins, for the most part, we store these, and we do not excrete a lot of them. Vitamin K, our store is smaller than the other fat-soluble vitamins. So as far as deficiencies go, we are more likely to develop a vitamin K deficiency than some of the other fat-soluble vitamins. And toxicity, vitamin A toxicity, is the most common. We are more likely to develop toxicities from the fat-soluble vitamins than the water-soluble vitamins because we do store them in our body. So when we eat more, they can just build up. We're not urinating them out every day. Vitamin A toxicity usually happens when somebody is eating excessive forms of vitamin A in supplements versus foods. And so supplements are something you do need to be cautious about. I said, yeah, most vitamins unlikely to cause toxicity unless taken in supplement form. So you can generally eat as many foods as you like. It's just when you're taking supplements that you can be at risk for toxicity. It's best to look for supplements that have 100% of the daily value and not much more than that. The daily value is set to actually be higher than the RDAs, so those daily values will meet the needs of almost all individuals. There's no need for taking a vitamin supplement that has, 300 times, 200 times, or 50 times more than those daily values, because in general, you're either just going to excrete that extra or you're going to store it and put you at more risk for toxicity. All right. So depending on what types of foods we eat and how those foods are cooked, prepared, stored, even when those foods are picked, can influence the vitamin and mineral activity in those foods. So riper foods have more vitamins, but the vitamins are lost between picking time and consumption. So if a ripe food is picked and not eaten soon, it will lose a lot of the vitamins. Many foods are picked before they're ripe and then transported to grocery stores or held in cold storage before you actually are able to purchase them. And those foods are not going to have as many vitamins because they weren't picked when they were ripe, as well as they were stored for a longer time. A great way to ensure that you're getting vitamin-rich foods is by shopping at farmers markets. Most farmers will pick the foods closer to ripening because they know that those foods are going to be sold locally and not have to be stored for long amounts of time or transported across the country. Water-soluble vitamins are slightly fragile and they can be destroyed by different storage and cooking temperatures. For example, folate, thiamine, and vitamin C. Heat, light, exposure to air, and cooking in water can destroy them, and we're going to talk about how coming up. And then frozen foods actually, in general, retain almost all of their nutrients. And this happens because of something called blanching. Blanching is a really, really quick heating method. It's kind of like a flash, almost like a cooking, but it doesn't cook it all the way through. It just heats it up to a certain temperature. And it destroys enzymes. And the enzymes that it destroys are enzymes that would be degrading the vitamins. So by blanching a food and then quickly freezing it, you stop that enzyme action and you preserve the integrity of the vitamins. All right, so some tips to maximize vitamins in your food. Keep them cool until eaten. Chilling will limit the action of those enzymes that can break them down. Cut them right before or just before you're going to eat or cook them. When you cut a fruit or a vegetable, you're exposing the surface to oxygen, and oxygen molecules can actually come and cause oxidative damage. Just think of if you cut open an apple, that apple starts to brown. It gets oxidized. Or if you cut open an avocado, the avocado starts to brown. If you cut open a potato, it starts to brown. And so that's a little bit of oxidation you can see. There's a lot of oxidation happening that you can't see, however, and that could be potentially breaking down vitamins. So cutting foods right when you're going to use them helps preserve some of the vitamins and minerals. I know it's convenient to buy foods that are already cut up or prepackaged that way, and that's okay. It's better to eat those than no fruits or vegetables, but it's possible that they have slightly less vitamin content. Minimize cooking time and contact with water. Both heat and exposure to water can reduce the amount of vitamins. With water, especially for the water-soluble vitamins. So if you are boiling carrots, for example, a lot of those water-soluble vitamins are going to leak out in the water, especially then if you throw away that water, if you're cooking beans or something like that. So if you do something like steaming, where they're not actually in the water, they're just getting the heat, or even something like microwaving, that can help minimize the heat. Or stir frying. So those can all be good methods. If you add fats to vegetables and you throw them away, the fat-soluble vitamins will leach out into that oil and you'll discard them all together. And so that reduces the amount of fat-soluble vitamins you could be potentially getting. And then baking soda is a base, it's alkaline, and that base destroys some of the vitamins, including thiamine and vitamin D. Minerals. So we've talked slightly about vitamins, and now we're going to talk about minerals. Again, we're going to revisit all of these things on upcoming chapters. So minerals are individual chemical elements, just like the periodic table of elements. They come right off there, and they cannot be broken down any further. Sometimes they're called ash, and I know this is kind of morbid, but ash is left over after people are cremated, and those are our minerals. That's exactly what is left over. The minerals are categorized into major minerals and trace minerals, and this depends on how much we need in our diet. So trace minerals, we need less than 100 milligrams per day, and major minerals, we need more than 100 milligrams per day. And 100 milligrams is actually a very, very small amount. 100 milligrams is only 1/50th of a teaspoon. So we're literally talking about like a tiny, 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 tiny amount of these minerals we need. Although we don't need very much, they are absolutely crucial to health. Okay, so I discussed the difference as far as amounts, and then here you have some of the minerals categorized as to if they are major or trace minerals. Ultra trace minerals are minerals that we need in very, very low amounts, but we don't actually know the requirements for them. We just know that they're found in the body and they do serve an important role. So some examples of those are boron, nickel, silicone, and vanadium. This is a similar chart to the one you saw for fruits or for vitamins. However, this time it's looking at minerals and which minerals are found in all of the food groups. I was staring right at fruits when I said that, but fruits, vegetables, grains, dairy, and protein. And you can see that grains and protein foods are very rich in minerals. However, fruits, vegetables, and dairy also contain some very important minerals. Mineral deficiency. So just like vitamins can be cure for disease, minerals can also be cure for disease. And if minerals are lacking, disease can develop. They've done some studies in the 1960s where there was a kind of mysterious dwarfism occurring in the Middle East, meaning people were not growing very tall. And they found that this was related to a zinc deficiency in that particular village. Heart disease in China, they linked that to a selenium deficiency. And then in North America, or really anywhere that they use intravenous nutrition, this is like IV nutrition for when people aren't able to eat by mouth or aren't able to be fed via a tube into their stomach. They've seen multiple mineral deficiencies in that IV nutrition as well. And so now they fortify it and add these minerals that were deficient to prevent that. Absorption of minerals depends on many factors that you can see here, and we're going to talk about some of those coming up in more detail. Age, gender, genetic variables, nutritional status, and diet. Nutritional status, for example, if you have adequate vitamin D and you consume calcium, the vitamin D can help with absorption of that calcium. If you consume them at the same meal, that's helpful as well. However, there are certain things that if you consume at the same time, they may compete with one another for absorption. So, for example, calcium, magnesium, iron, and copper are all similar sized molecules and have the same charge. So they do compete with one another for absorption. Fiber and mineral absorption. So fiber is found in plant foods, and fiber is good for us. It helps keep our GI tract flowing and regular and healthy. However, some components in fiber do bind to minerals. And when they bind to minerals, they are excreted with those minerals they have bound to. And so we are not able to absorb them. And those compounds in fiber are called phytic acids and oxalic acids. This can significantly decrease the absorption of things like iron, zinc, and many other minerals. So an example here is spinach. Spinach is really healthy. It's full of fiber. It's full of antioxidants. It's got protein. It's got calcium. However, we can only absorb about 5% of the calcium from spinach because of oxalic acid. And other foods that have calcium, we're usually able to absorb upwards of 25%. So there are a few kind of issues with really high fiber intakes and potential to reduce or inhibit some of the vitamin or specifically the mineral absorption. I mentioned minerals with the same chemical charge on the last slide. There are also relationships between minerals that improve absorption. I mentioned vitamin D and calcium. Iron and vitamin C is another one. If you consume vitamin C foods at the same time as iron foods, that actually helps absorb certain foods of iron, specifically those in plant proteins. So that's really a beneficial combination of nutrients. So minerals do occur in both animals and plants. We saw on that My Plate slide that they're very high in protein foods, they're very high in grains. However, animal sources of minerals are absorbed better. And this is because they don't have those phytates or oxalates in the fiber to block absorption. There's a second component to this, and this has to do with soil quality. So when you are growing a food like kale, for example, that kale grows in the soil and it can absorb minerals from that soil. But if that soil is deficient in any of the minerals, the kale will also be low in those minerals. The kale is only in one soil, and so it's only getting whatever it has right there. However, when animals eat, they potentially are eating many grains, and those many grains potentially came from multiple sources, which means they were potentially grown in multiple different soil environments, and hopefully some of those soils had adequate minerals and potentially even had a variety of minerals for those plants to absorb. So I'm not trying to say that animal foods are better than plant foods. I'm not trying to say that at all. I just am saying that there are some challenges to absorbing minerals from plant sources. But this is absolutely not a reason to not eat plant sources, and it's absolutely not a reason to eat animal sources instead. Vegetarian and vegan diets can absolutely be adequate. Other things, so where are they absorbed? Most minerals are absorbed in the small intestine, but some in the stomach and large intestine. For example, sodium and potassium are absorbed in the large intestine. And most minerals travel through the blood bound to a transport protein. So for example, iron is transported by a protein called transferrin, and calcium usually travels with a protein called albumin. Where do we store our minerals? So our skeleton is a very obvious place where we store our minerals. And I'm going to talk about exactly where they go. We also store them in the muscles, in the organs, in the gland, a few of them in the liver, and then also our teeth. So this is kind of where we distribute our minerals throughout the body. Mineral toxicity. So just like vitamins, you are more likely to be at risk for toxicity if you are taking a supplement. Our body is pretty good at regulating our nutrient sources from foods we eat and absorbing just the right amount as well as excreting just the right amount. But when we take supplements, sometimes we get just these really, really high levels that our body can't handle. Certain minerals are at higher risk for causing toxicities than others, and those are copper and iron. And that's because there's a very small gap between having kind of just enough and too much. So it's recommended that if you do take a supplement, one, you go over it with your doctor, and two, it should not exceed 100% of the daily value. Because remember, there is no need for excess unless your doctor has specifically identified that you may be at risk for deficiency and prescribed you a higher dose. There is contamination possible with supplements, lead, for example, and so that is another risk for eating supplement forms of both vitamins and minerals. All right, so how do we preserve the minerals from the foods we eat? Unfortunately, in plant foods, minerals are kind of easily compromised. And this can happen by processing, by storing, by cooking, and harvesting. Just think of the milling of grains when we remove all of kind of the healthy essential nutrient part of that grain food. The only mineral that we add back to grains is iron. So iron is lost, but there are also other minerals that can be lost, and we don't add any of those back. So if you're eating whole grains, you're going to get any of the minerals that were naturally present in that food. But if you're eating refined grains, white processed flours and things like that, you're going to be missing out potentially. Minerals are not generally lost from animal sources, and so animal sources are generally not refined. We don't usually add or really ever add iron to a steak. The steak has plenty of iron in it already. What else? Yeah, I think I've discussed everything here. Okay, functions of minerals. So we're going to talk about this coming up, but minerals have very many important functions in our body. They work as cofactors and coenzymes, so they are vital to many of our metabolic processes. They work in fluid and electrolyte balance, for example, chloride, potassium, phosphorus, and sodium. They work as antioxidants, vitamin C, vitamin E, and this is function of vitamins and minerals. I know I'm listing some vitamins here. They work in bone health, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, and many vitamins, energy metabolism, B vitamins, chromium, iodine, manganese, molybdenum, blood health, vitamin K and calcium, as well as iron, copper, B6, and folate, and then immunity, zinc, copper, selenium, and iron. So what are enzymes and coenzymes? Enzymes are catalysts for biological reactions or biochemical reactions, and they allow reactions to occur without being destroyed or changed themselves. We'll see a picture of an enzyme coming up. Most enzymes are made by proteins. However, they usually need a coenzyme or cofactor to allow that enzyme to work. And so usually the cofactors or coenzymes are vitamins or minerals. And enzymes are really important to metabolism. Without enzymes, we would not be able to break down carbs, lipids, or proteins to generate energy. This is a picture of an inactive enzyme and a vitamin coenzyme. And so you can see that that inactive enzyme would not be able to do anything unless that vitamin coenzyme was present. So I'm going to use the pen to show you how it works. So when the inactive enzyme and the vitamin are combined, they form this molecule. And right here, this little circle I'm drawing, this is where the substrate will go in. I don't know what this particular enzyme is binding, but it would go into this binding site right here. If you didn't have this vitamin coenzyme, you wouldn't have this whole purple part, and there would be no binding site. So the enzyme would be pretty much worthless. Some examples are thiamine. Thiamine works as a coenzyme for the enzyme thiamine pyrophosphate, and minerals are cofactors, for example, selenium. So who needs dietary supplements? And what exactly are dietary supplements? So According to the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, supplement in the U.S. is a product intended to supplement the diet and must contain one of the following ingredients: a vitamin, a mineral, an herb or botanical, and amino acid. And it might be a combination of any of those 4 ingredients as well. This is a pretty broad definition and covers many, many nutritional substances. So this is a huge industry, and it's worth $35 to $36 billion a year. The problem with this is supplements are not regulated. So unless the FDA has proof that that supplement is dangerous or has been marketed with an illegal claim, it will not regulate the supplement at all. And the FDA is a huge organization, but they have pretty limited resources, and they do not have time to look at every single vitamin and mineral supplement on the market and determine if they are safe or not. So it's up to the manufacturers of those supplements to ensure that they are safe. And that is you putting your trust in really somebody else's hands. Why do people take them, and how many people take them? So you can see the number of people taking supplements is just growing in billions of dollars, and it's huge. Some of the reasons people take them are because of beliefs that they have. They believe that they might reduce stress, prevent cancer, reduce heart attacks, help them, recover from diseases such as colds, cure HIV, I've even heard, improve bone health, etc. All right. So should you take a dietary supplement? General recommendation is if you are eating an adequate diet, you probably don't need one. However, if you want to take one and you take one at or below the RDA, you should be fine. Most studies have shown no benefit from taking a multivitamin mineral supplement as long as it is, below 100% of the RDA. So I think people think they're kind of like an insurance or backup plan, but we do not have scientific evidence really to say that. There are researchers out there who will argue this, and I have heard some pretty good evidence about this, especially with certain vitamins or minerals. For example, vitamin D, folate, especially for certain populations, thiamine, B6, B12. And so there are quite a few groups of researchers who do argue that vitamin supplements are very helpful to our diet. Calcium as well. There are certain populations that may benefit from vitamin and nutrient supplements, and pregnant women are one of them. Postmenopausal women are one of them. Breastfeeding women may be one of them. Elderly people. And then depending on the age and setting, children may need certain supplements as well. So we're going to look at all those coming up. Okay. So if you have low calorie intake, less than 1,200 calories a day, if you have an inadequate diet, if you have a malabsorptive disease such as cystic fibrosis, you should probably take a vitamin and mineral supplement. Of course, talk to your doctor about it, but it probably would be beneficial to you. Alcoholics have extremely low levels of the B vitamins, and so alcoholics could benefit from taking a B vitamin supplement. Older adults and vegans are at risk for B12 deficiency. Vitamin C is beneficial for smokers. Vitamin D, if you do not eat adequate sources of vitamin D, perhaps you're not eating fortified dairy or fortified non-dairy sources, or you're not out in the sun a lot. If you're elderly, if you cover up when you are out in the sun, wear hats and sunglasses and long sleeves, you may benefit from a vitamin D. Vitamin E, if you're eating a very low-fat diet or not eating any vegetable oils. Vitamin K, all newborns get a shot of vitamin K at birth to prevent bleeding. Calcium, menopausal women, strict vegans, older adults, anyone with bone loss, maybe a small child if they're not eating enough natural calcium sources. Fluoride, usually infants and children, their dentists recommend fluoride. Iron, many women, especially women who are at the age where they're menstruating, pregnant women, and vegans. And then zinc, strict vegan diet, and potentially some elderly as well. So, risks with supplements. Some of these supplements may have potential interactions with other medications or other vitamins or minerals. So zinc and copper, they both have a 2+ charge and they're similar size. So if you're taking a ton of zinc, it might limit your ability to absorb copper. And copper can actually lead to anemia and metabolic problems. Folate, if you're taking a lot of folate, but you're low in B12, that folate will let your cells kind of look healthy. And so you might not recognize, or a doctor, not yourself, but a doctor might not recognize that you have a potential B12 deficiency. Vitamin E or K can interfere with anti-clotting meds. Anti-clotting meds are usually given after somebody has a heart attack or a stroke to reduce their risk of a future blood clot. And if they're taking a lot of vitamin K or vitamin E, that could interfere with it. Vitamin B6 could interfere with levodopa. Levodopa is a Parkinson's drug that can help reduce the tremors in Parkinson's disease. And then vitamin C may interact with certain cancer meds. Also, I'll say iron is not recommended in certain disease states. For example, it's actually not recommended to take iron supplements if you have HIV or AIDS, because that can enhance the viral growth. And iron is also not recommended in some cancers. If you take supplements, I've said this already, but limit to 100% of the RDA or less. Don't take iron unless you've been advised to. If you have too much iron, it actually serves as a pro-oxidant, meaning it can cause oxidative damage. It can also cause inflammation and cause some gastrointestinal side effects. Vitamin D, it is likely okay to be over the RDA on because the UL is so high. The UL is 4,000. So it's probably okay to be a little bit over the RDA on vitamin D, especially since so many people are deficient. And then look for the logo of USP. We're going to see a picture of this coming up, but USP is US Pharmacopoeia, and it is an individual, it's a private lab that will certify the content of these vitamins and minerals, as well as guarantees the safety, the cleanliness of that manufacturing plant. Other supplement helps. You can visit some of these websites for additional information. This is the picture of the USP label. There are additional companies out there that will certify the safety, the quality, the digestibility, free from contamination of supplements. One is NSF, this is National Sanitation Federation, and the other is Consumer Lab. So you could look for any of these labels. Sorry, I'm a slow writer. Consumer Lab. All right, so this is like a upside down vitamin and mineral kind of food pyramid. And you can see at the top of this pyramid, most of our vitamins and minerals should come from foods. And in fact, we are able to get all of our vitamins and minerals from foods, natural foods. We can then depend on fortified foods. For example, they often add vitamin D or calcium to orange juice. They add vitamin D to milk. If we're still not getting enough vitamins and minerals, we can add a supplement, usually just a multi-supplement, less than 100% RDA. And if there is one particular nutrient we are low in, we can take that particular nutrient after discussing with our doctor. All right, so this is just some conclusions about what we talked about today. We reviewed an overview of vitamins and minerals. We discussed different types of vitamins and minerals and discussed supplements and where they have a place, as well as why there is some risk associated with them. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed the lecture.